I arrived at the venue 2 hours before the wedding. The sky still soft with morning light, the chandeliers inside brighter than the sun outside. My black and white uniform felt tighter than usual, maybe because my nerves were already pulling at me. I'd worked dozens of weddings before, small ones in community halls, elegant ones on rooftops, but nothing like this. The moment I stepped into the ballroom, I could tell this family wasn't just rich. They were powerful. The kind of people who didn't choose flowers, they commissioned them. Crystal glasses lined up perfectly, violins warming up in the corner, planners rushing around with headsets. Everyone looked important. Everyone looked perfect, except me. I always felt like a background shadow in these places. A quiet 24-year-old girl from a broken, noisy home who worked double shifts because silence and rent didn't pay themselves. I'd grown up learning to fade into the edges. Being a waitress was only a natural extension of that skill. Serve, smile, disappear. But that day, disappearing felt impossible. Something heavy settled in my chest the moment I stepped onto the glossy marble floor. Like the air was warning me that this wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a storm dressed in gold. I went to the prep area, adjusted my apron, and started arranging the trays of flutes filled with pale champagne. Everything had to be perfect. Rich people didn't like imperfections, and they certainly didn't like imperfect staff. I'd learned that too many times. As the guests began filing in, their perfume mixing with the scent of lily and candle wax. I kept my head down and worked, smile, nod, refill. But then the music changed. The soft, trembling sound of strings rising for the bride's entrance. I didn't even mean to look up. Waitresses weren't supposed to, but something inside me pulled my eyes toward the staircase, and I froze. Ella. Her name hit me like a silent scream inside my chest. She stood there at the top of the grand staircase, veil flowing behind her like smoke, bouquet shaking slightly in her hands. She was beautiful, everyone could see that, but beauty wasn't what it stunned me. It was the way she looked, lost, empty, pale, as if she were walking through a dream she never agreed to have, and something else, something too painful to name. The world around me blurred. The chatter, the music, the clinking glasses, they faded into a distant hum. I couldn't hear anything except my heartbeat kicking against my ribs. She descended the steps slowly. People whispered, "She looks nervous. No bride is this quiet." She didn't smile once. But I noticed something else. Her eyes weren't searching for the groom. They were searching the room. Searching for something familiar. And then her gaze found mine. Just for a second. Just long enough for my breath to catch. A sharp electric recognition spread through me. Not just memory motion. A quiet ache, an old longing, a sadness I'd buried 2 years ago. She knew me. I knew her. But the moment passed as quickly as it arrived, swallowed by applause as she reached the stage. I forced myself to look away, gripping my tray tighter to hide the shaking in my hands. The groom, perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect confidence, stood waiting with a smile too wide to be real. He looked proud. He looked satisfied. He looked like he believed he deserved her. Simply because everyone had always told him he could have whatever he wanted. He leaned in to whisper something to her. Something meant to look sweet, but her face didn't move. Not even a polite smile. Her eyes were distant, unfocused. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't care. The ceremony began. As the priest spoke about love, loyalty, and choice, I watched Alara's fingers tremble around her bouquet. Every now and then, the groom glanced at her with a hint of irritation, as though her silence was an inconvenience he hadn't prepared for. People noticed. A woman near me whispered, "She looks sick." Another murmured, "Maybe she's having second thoughts." But I knew better. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't jitters. This was a girl walking toward something she didn't want. The ring bearer stepped forward. The priest spoke of eternal vows, and then Alara looked up again, not at the groom, not at her family, at me, her eyes locked with mine, unblinking, desperate, aching, like she was silently saying something she wasn't allowed to speak. Something about a night 2 years ago. A bookstore. A conversation that lasted too long to be accidental. A connection that felt too deep for strangers to share. We had met before. We had felt something before, but there had never been time, never been courage to understand what it meant. And now she was marrying someone else. I swallowed hard, trying to return my attention to the champagne glasses. But every part of me felt exposed, trembling, confused. Why me? Why look at me like that? Why now? Why did it feel like her eyes were begging me not to disappear again? I shouldn't have been thinking any of this. I was a waitress, barely part of the room, barely part of the world she lived in, but the ache in my chest said otherwise. By the time the ceremony ended, my heart felt bruised. I tried to walk away, to hide behind the crowd, behind my job, behind anything that wasn't her eyes. But as I moved, I felt it again, a third glance, soft, sad, full of something I didn't want to name. And in that moment, a chill ran down my spine because I realized something I shouldn't have. She didn't look at him once, but she looked at me 3 times. I tried to distract myself with work after the ceremony, focusing on trays, tables, glasses, anything but the bride whose eyes had burned holes through me. But avoiding her was impossible. Everywhere I moved, I felt the ghost of her gaze. It clung to me like the faint scent of her perfume drifting through the air. And with every stolen glance, memories I tried to bury began clawing their way back up. 3 years ago, a bookstore on a rainy evening. It had been the kind of rain that makes people rush, hide, hurry. But I had nowhere to hurry to. I remember pushing open the bookstore door, my jacket dripping on the floor, my hair a wild storm around my face. The bell chimed softly above me. That's when I saw her. Alara stood beside a shelf of poetry, her fingers grazing the spine of a book as though she were choosing a lover, not literature. She looked peaceful, completely untouched by the world outside. I remember wondering how someone could look so calm. While everything inside me felt like a runaway storm, I reached for a book, Pablo Neruda's Poems, and she spoke first. That one made me cry. She said. Her voice was gentle but not shy, warm in a way voices rarely are these days. It made me look up, and when I did, she smiled, not politely, but as if she was genuinely happy I existed in that moment. I'd never seen her before. That was the strange part. She had the aura of someone important, someone who belonged to rare places, private schools, expensive vacations. And I was the girl who worked double shifts to afford secondhand books, but none of that mattered in those first seconds. Standing between shelves, the rain humming outside, we weren't strangers. Not really. Do you like poetry? I asked her. She nodded. I like things that hurt beautifully. I remember thinking, me too. We talked for nearly an hour. About books. About life. About heartbreaks that weren't really heartbreaks. Just quiet disappointments life hands you too early. It felt easy, too easy. Conversations aren't supposed to feel like that with strangers. When the shopkeeper announced closing time, I panicked internally. I didn't want the moment to end. But Alara simply tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, smiled at me again, and said, "Maybe I'll see you here again." Maybe. I didn't know then how much that maybe would shape my life for months after. We met at the bookstore 3 more times, never planned, never arranged. Fate kept nudging us into the same corner of the world. We'd sit on the floor with books around us, talking about dreams we weren't brave enough to chase yet. She'd laugh at my sarcasm. I'd tease her for choosing the saddest poems in every collection. Hands would brush accidentally. Hearts would beat louder than they should. It wasn't love, not yet. It wasn't even confessed attraction, but it was something soft. Something we never named. Something that scared her more than it scared me. Then one day, she disappeared. Just like that. No message. No explanation. No goodbye. I waited for weeks at the bookstore after shifts, pretending I just liked the place. But deep down, I knew I was hoping she'd walk in again. Maybe with rain in her hair, maybe with a smile ready for me. She never came back. And life forced me to forget her, the way it forces us to forget everything that doesn't fit into our world. Until today. Until this wedding. Until her eyes touched mine like a wound being reopened. Now she was here wearing a white dress she didn't seem happy to wear, walking around the dinner hall, greeting guests with a stiff, practiced smile. As I refilled glasses at one of the tables, I sensed her presence before I saw her. My back straightened. My hands stilled. Alara moved closer. Not to the groom. Not to her family. Closer to me. She stopped beside my tray under the illusion of adjusting her bouquet. You remembered me, she whispered. Her voice hadn't changed. Still warm. Still dangerous. I swallowed a breath. I remember every customer. A lie. Because she had never been a customer, and she had never belonged in that category. She looked at me for a long second, her lips curving into the saddest smile I'd ever seen. I wasn't just a customer, she murmured. The air between us tightened, stretched, trembled, before I could say anything. The groom appeared, hand gripping her arm a little too firmly. His smile looked painted on, his eyes sharp. There you are. I was looking for you, he said, more like a warning than affection. Alara instantly stepped back, her posture stiffening like a soldier being summoned. She didn't look at me again. She didn't have to. I had already seen the fear in her eyes. As the groom pulled her away, I overheard a few guests whispering behind me. He's too controlling. He didn't let her pick the menu. He told her not to talk to the staff. Poor girl. She looks terrified. A cold dread spread through me. Something was deeply wrong. More wrong than just a loveless marriage. I forced myself back to work, but my thoughts kept spinning. I tried focusing on plates, on napkins, on anything except the image of her being dragged away. Later, as I passed behind her to serve another table, her hand brushed mine. So fast I almost thought I imagined it, but then something thin slipped into my palm, a folded piece of paper. Alara didn't look at me. She didn't turn. She just kept walking, keeping her face perfectly calm for the crowd. But the note burned in my hand like a secret waiting to explode. I knew whatever was happening in her life now, I was about to be pulled into it again. I slipped into the storage room the moment no one was watching. The music outside thumped through the walls, soft, romantic, completely wrong for the panic tightening my chest. The note in my hand felt too light for the weight it carried. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. Her handwriting was exactly the same, curved, delicate, unsure. 2 lines. Just 2. I didn't choose this wedding. Please, don't walk away from me again. My breath left me. Not slowly. Not all at once. It punched out of my lungs. I leaned back against a stack of folded tablecloths, the paper shaking between my fingers. She remembered. All this time. Even after disappearing without a word. Even after walking into a marriage she didn't want. She remembered me, and she thought I had been the one who walked away, but she had been the one who vanished. Ache of that day returned like a bruise pressed too hard. Flashback. The day she disappeared, it had been a quiet Sunday. I'd gone to the bookstore like always, telling myself I was just there to look at new arrivals, but hoping pathetically that she might appear. I reread the same line in a poetry book 5 times, waiting for the bell above the door to chime. It never did. Instead, my phone rang. My mother had called from the house, arguing with her boyfriend again. Nothing unusual. But in the background of the call, I heard something, a man's voice. Sharp, cold. No more bookstore. No more strangers. You're harming our reputation. A woman's shaky apology, and then Alara's voice stopped soft, broken. I understand, Father. I remember freezing. I didn't know if I imagined it. I didn't know if it was real, but the next day, she didn't come. Or the next. Or the next dot, and a week later, the bookstore owner mentioned casually that one of his rich little customers wasn't allowed to visit anymore. Strict family, he sighed. They pulled her out immediately. That was the day I stopped waiting. That was the day. I convinced myself she had chosen another life one where I didn't fit. But now, this note, she hadn't chosen any of it. The engagement, the wedding, the distance, the silence. She had been taken away. I pressed the paper to my chest, overwhelmed by a mix of relief, fury, and heartbreak. Outside, applause erupted for the couple's entrance. It felt like knives. I took a breath and walked back into the ballroom. The shift in energy was obvious the moment I stepped out. The groom, now several drinks in held, his glass with the casual arrogance of a man who believed everything in the room existed for his convenience. Alara walked a step behind him. Not beside him, behind. It's your wedding, he snapped quietly. The least you can do is pretend you're happy. You ruined half the photos with your blank expression. My jaw clenched. I wasn't supposed to hear that. And he wasn't supposed to say it. Guests thereby exchanged looks. Some pitying, some annoyed, some uncomfortable. Alara didn't defend herself. She didn't say a word. She just lowered her eyes like a child being scolded. It made me want to throw the nearest tray at him. Instead, I forced myself to do my job. I approached to offer champagne to a group near them, but my hand was shaking. The tray rattled. And then it happened. A glass slipped off, hit the polished floor, and shattered. A sharp, ringing crack cut through the music. Everyone gasped. I froze. Before I could kneel to clean it, Alara rushed forward, her wedding dress pulled on the ground as she crouched beside me, reaching to help gather the broken pieces. Brides don't do that. Brides aren't allowed to do that. Not in families like hers, but she didn't care. I'm sorry, I whispered. She shook her head. Don't apologize. You're shaking. Before I could answer, the groom stormed toward us. Alara, are you insane? His voice was a hiss. Get up. Your dress. But she ignored him and finished picking up the last shard of glass. That small act kneeling beside me said more than any love letter could. Her father's rules. His control. Her gilded cage. And yet, she was still choosing to come closer to me. A planner rushed in to replace the broken glass, and the crowd's attention moved on. The groom dragged Alara away, but she slipped from his grip at the first chance. I felt her presence again minutes later. Behind the sage curtain where servers passed between courses, I turned, and she was there. Not a bride, not a rich girl. Just Alara, the girl from the bookstore. The one who had looked at poetry like it was a lifeline. I wanted to find you, she whispered, chest rising fast as if she had run. I tried. I wasn't allowed. I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing the truth I'd waited years to hear. You're getting married, I murmured. This is your wedding. No, she breathed. This is my prison. Her voice cracked. I'm getting trapped in a life I didn't choose, with a man my family chose for me, with expectations I can't breathe under. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the curtain shifted and someone's shadow darkened the space around us. The groom. His half smile had disappeared. His drunken cheerfulness was gone. He stared at Yus, standing far too close, speaking far too quietly. looking far too familiar in something cold. Sharp and dangerous replaced the warmth in his eyes. He stepped forward, and everything in the room suddenly felt like it was holding its breath. The music had barely shifted when it happened. One moment the hall was glowing with laughter, crystal chandeliers spilling warm light over polished marble. And the next, the groom's hand wrapped tightly around Alara's wrist. His smile cracked, polished, practiced, then vanished completely as he pulled her aside. Away from the cameras, away from the guests, I froze mid-step, a tray of champagne trembling in my hands. He didn't look angry. He looked afraid of losing something, or someone dot through the flicker of candlelight. I watched his jaw tense. Alara tried to smile, to look graceful, to look like the bride she was supposed to be, but her eyes kept drifting toward me. And he noticed. He noticed everything. He dragged her through a side door near the decor table. The door slammed shut. For a moment, the whole world went still, and all I heard was my heartbeat, loud, heavy, terrified, because for the first time tonight, I realized something. Her gaze on me wasn't an accident, and the groom finally understood that too. The confrontation behind the door, I stepped closer, not enough to be caught, but close enough to hear the muffled edge of voices dot his voice first, sharp, accusing. What was that, Alara? Why were you looking at the help like that? I wasn't. Don't lie to me. Silence. A painful kind of silence that only comes when truth sits too close to the throat. My chest tightened, guilt clawing up like a shadow. I wanted to disappear behind the nearest tablecloth, hide from this entire night, vanish from the world that wasn't supposed to include me. Then his voice lowered, trembling with something darker. Is this about that girl from the bookstore? My breath slipped out. My knees nearly buckled. He knew. He knew. Alara's voice cracked. No, please. Just stop. But the groom didn't believe her. He stepped out of the room alone a few seconds later, his eyes sweeping the hall like a predator looking for the truth. And I knew I was the truth. Fear, guilt, heartbreak. I pretended to arrange glasses on the counter, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every step I took echoed with fear. I ruined her wedding. I ruined her life. I shouldn't have come today. My heart broke in a quiet, humiliating way, because even after all this time, even after years of distance, I still wasn't strong enough to stay away from her, and she wasn't strong enough to hide her feelings. Not from me. Not from anyone. The secret signal when I returned to the table near the head stage. There was something on my serving tray, a flower, soft, white, delicate. A single jasmine bloom. I didn't put it. There. My throat tightened. Alara had once told me jasmine reminded her of late evenings at my bookstore, the ones where we talked until the manager flicked the lights. Twice, attached to the flower was the smallest folded note, a single word, sorry. Felt the apology like a knife, like she was saying it not for tonight, but for the day she walked out of the bookstore and never returned. I turned, scanning the crowd. Alara stood near the draped corridor, half hidden, her eyes begging me to follow, and I did. That corridor, the truth unravels. The corridor behind the venue was quiet, lined with stacks of unused decor and dim yellow bulbs. She waited there, breathing hard, the weight of an entire wedding pressing on her shoulders. Alara, my voice broke. Why did you send that? She stepped closer, and the smell of jasmine, real jasmine, was on her veil. I needed to talk to you, she whispered, before someone else ruins everything. My hands shook. Your groom, he's suspicious. He knows something. I know, she said softly, eyes glistening, because he found my old journal months ago. My breath stopped. Alara, why didn't you tell me? Tears pooled in her eyes, but she forced herself to speak. All those months, she said, I used to walk into your bookstore, Even when I didn't need a book, I waited for you to look up. I waited for you to smile. I waited to feel like myself. My lips trembled. Then why did you stop coming? She swallowed hard. Because I felt something more than friendship. Something I wasn't supposed to feel. Her voice cracked. And when my father found out, he arranged this marriage in days, not months. I didn't choose him. I didn't choose this life. They gave me no choice. I took a step back, the pain hitting me like a cold wave. I had imagined 1,000 reasons why she disappeared, but never this. Then why didn't you run? I whispered .elar. Closed her eyes. I had nowhere to run, except to you. And hearing those words almost shattered me, the hidden threat. Before I could answer her, a faint shuffle echoed from the end of the corridor. We turned. The groom's best man stood half hidden behind the stacked gift boxes. Eyes wide, lips slightly parted. He had been listening, and he didn't even pretend otherwise. He smirked, not cruelly, but with the dangerous excitement of a man who knew he held a story that would explode the entire wedding. He turned and walked away casually. Already pulling out his phone, my stomach dropped. If he told the groom, if he told the guests, if he told anyone, Alara's life would be destroyed and mine would be too. I grabbed Alara's trembling hands. We need to be careful. This is bad, Alara, really bad. I know, she whispered, but I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Her tears spilled over. I'm so tired of pretending. The groom's final warning before we could return to the hall. A shadow blocked the corridor. The groom, his expression was unreadable. Too calm for what he must have suspected, he stepped toward me slowly, eyes pinning me like a threat pressed against the skin. Alara, he said without looking at her. Go back inside. She hesitated. He didn't repeat himself, but the weight of his anger filled the space until she obeyed. Now it was just him and me. He stepped close, so close I could smell the expensive cologne mixed with the scent of jealousy. His voice was soft, too soft. If you want to live peacefully, he said, stay away from my wife. My heart stopped, not because he threatened my job, not because he threatened my safety, but because he called her my wife. And for the first time, it sounded like a warning to the universe. He leaned even closer. And if I see her look at you again, even once, I'll make sure you regret ever stepping into this wedding. He walked away, leaving my breath shattered in my chest. And that's how Section 4 ends, with the truth finally spoken and the danger finally unleashed. I didn't wait. The second the groom walked away from me, the moment his threats echoed down the corridor, I turned and headed straight for the service exit. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't stay. I needed to get out of that place before everything collapsed. Before the truth destroyed us both. The hallway blurred as I rushed through it, the clatter of dishes, the laugh of drunken guests, the ringing of wedding music, all of it melting into a distant hum. But just as I reached the kitchen door, a hand grabbed my wrist. Alara? I whispered. She nodded, breathless, her eyes swollen and shining. She pulled me behind the swinging kitchen door, out of sight, into the narrow storage corner where pots hung from overhead rails. Why are you leaving? She asked, voice shaking. Why now? I have to, I whispered. It's the only way to protect you. She stepped closer, desperation trembling in her hands. Don't leave me again. Her words crashed into me with the same force they once did years ago, when she left without a goodbye, without an explanation. Alara. I struggled for air. I can't save you from a life you won't save yourself from. Her face broke. I tried, she whispered. I fought with my family. I begged them to listen, but they said my life wasn't mine, that what I felt was just a phase, just weakness. I shook my head. tears stinging my eyes. But you still came today. You still chose this. She grabbed both my hands. No, I didn't choose him. I chose survival. Her voice cracked. And that was the moment I understood she wasn't weak. She was trapped. And loving me made her pay the price. The groom finds them, the kitchen door slammed open. We both jumped. The groom stood there, chest heaving, eyes burning with a betrayal he didn't know how to understand. What is this? He growled. Alara stepped in front of me instinctively, like she finally wasn't afraid to be seen protecting the person she loved. But he didn't look at her. He looked at me. You've been ruining our day since you walked in. He spat. My best man told me everything. The bookstore. The looks. The secrets. He turned to Alara, pain twisting his face. Is that why you've been ignoring me? Because of her? Alara's lips trembled, but no words came out. He grabbed her wrist again, tightly this time. Say it. Before she could, I stepped forward. It's my fault. My voice was steady. Even though my insides were shattering, both of them turned to me. I came here tonight even though I shouldn't have. I made her uncomfortable. I misread things. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Alara's eyes widened in heartbreak. Don't do that, she whispered. Don't take the blame for me. But the groom wasn't listening. He was staring at her like everything finally made sense. You humiliated me, he whispered, voice cracking. In front of my family. In front of my friends. On our wedding day. I never wanted this wedding. Alara cried, her voice finally breaking, the first time all night. I never loved you. The groom went still. The entire kitchen staff froze. Even the pots hanging above us seemed to stop swaying. Alara wasn't done. Her chest heaved as the truth ripped its way out. I loved someone else. Someone I should have fought for. Her gaze found me, and my heart shattered in that moment because I felt her love and her pain and her regret all at once. Like a wave that drowned me without warning. I shook my head, stepping back. No, Alara, don't do this here. Don't say it like this. I lost you once, she whispered, tears streaming. I won't lose you again. But the groom lunged forward, fury tightening his fists. I didn't let him get close. I slipped away before his anger lashed out, before the words or hands could land on anyone, because no matter what Alara felt, no matter what I felt, her life was still tied to this wedding, this moment, this choice, and I had no right to tear it apart. Walking away, the last goodbye, I left the kitchen, heart pounding, vision blurred. My mind replayed Alara's confession again and again, like someone pressing a bruise until it bled. She left me. She always loved me, and yet she wasn't mine. Not today. Not anymore. I walked toward the darker corner of the hall, where no one would see me cry. The guests were laughing, drinking, taking selfies, in their world. Nothing was wrong, in mine. Everything had collapsed. I knew this was the last time I'd ever see her, the last time her eyes would find me in a crowd, the last time her heartbeat would echo in the same room as mine. Our story didn't end with kisses or reunions. It ended in silence. Silence I had to carry alone. The final twist. The collapse. The wedding host tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're about to begin the vows. My heart clenched. I shouldn't have looked. I shouldn't have turned, but I did. For one last glimpse of her, Alara walked toward the stage, her veil trembling, her steps uneven. She looked pale, like the truth had drained every last piece of strength from her. The groom walked beside her, tense, furious, pretending everything was fine. Guests whispered, cameras flashed. The music softened. The priest opened the book and cleared his throat. Do you? Alara. Alara's body swayed. At first, I thought she was adjusting her veil. Then her knees buckled. Her bouquet slipped from her hand. And before Anyone could move. Before the groom could reach her, before I could take a single step, she collapsed. Collective gasp rippled through the hall. Chairs scraped. Women screamed. The groom shouted her name in panic. I stood frozen in the corner, the world blurring as tears filled my eyes, because no matter what happened next, this wedding, this life, this moment was never meant to be hers. She couldn't give her life to someone she never loved. And the truth finally broke her body the same way it broke her heart. And watching her fall, helpless, unreachable, destroyed something inside me that I knew would never heal again. Chaos spread through the hall like a crack in glass, fast, unstoppable, impossible to ignore. Alara lay on the stage, unconscious for only a moment, but long enough for the entire wedding to break apart. Guests panicked. The groom shouted at the staff. Her mother rushed to her side, finally shaken free of the perfect family performance she held all evening. And me. I stood frozen near the corner, gripping the serving tray like it was the only thing keeping me upright. They carried Alara away, not to a hospital, but to a quiet room in the back, away from cameras and gossip, away from the eyes that had judged her all night. The music stopped. The lights dimmed. The celebration died without anyone announcing its end. The wedding had paused. But her life, it was shifting. And mine with it. Outside the quiet room, I shouldn't have followed them. I shouldn't have walked those steps down the narrow backstage hallway. I shouldn't have let hope drag me there, but I did. I stopped outside the closed door where they had taken her. I could hear muffled voices, her mother's soft crying, the groom's angry pacing, the doctor's calm instructions. She fainted due to stress, someone said inside. Let her rest. The groom stormed out a second later, not even noticing me pressed against the wall. She embarrassed me. This whole thing is a joke, he muttered to his best man before disappearing down the hallway. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't touch her hand. He didn't wait for her to wake. He left because his pride was hurt. And her mother? She came out moments later, her hands shaking, mascara smudged. She's not happy, she whispered, maybe to herself, maybe to the walls. We pushed her too far. Her eyes flicked to mine, just for a second. Not with hatred. Not with suspicion. But with a recognition. That felt painfully human. Like she finally understood what her daughter had been trying to say without words. Then she walked away too. And suddenly the hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Just me. And the door. I didn't knock. I didn't enter. I simply stood there, unsure if I had the right to cross the line her world built around her. The bride emerges, minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Grief tends to bend time. Then the door creaked open. Alara stepped out, still in her wedding dress. The fabric torn at the hem, smudged with dust. Her veil hanging loose like it had fought a storm, but she was awake, breathing, walking, and looking for me. Her eyes found mine instantly. She walked slowly. Not because she was weak, but because she was uncertain. Like every step was a question she didn't know the answer to. Alara. I whispered. She stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of lavender from her hair. Her voice was soft when it came. I can't marry him. A single tear slid down her cheek. I tried. I tried for my family, for expectations, for everything except myself. Her breath trembled, but her voice cracked at the one word she didn't want to say. I can't be with you either. Not yet. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a woman standing between two worlds, neither of which she could fully hold. I understand, I said, and it shocked me how much I meant it. Love isn't always possession. Sometimes it's letting someone walk free. Alara moved closer, her forehead leaning gently against mine. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a promise. It was something quieter, something sadder, something truer. She wrapped her arms around me, her hands cold against my back, her breath shaking with every exhale. I held her the way you hold someone who is breaking but still choosing to stand. We didn't speak. Not for a long time. The silence between us held all the words we never said, all the moments we lost, all the futures we feared. Finally, I whispered, "Live the life you want, not the one you're forced into." Her hands tightened for a second, just 1 second, like she was memorizing the feeling. Then she stepped back without a word. She walks away, Alara bent down, slipped off her wedding heels, and held them in her hand, barefoot. Quiet, free in a way that looked painful and beautiful at the same time. She walked toward the exit, not toward the groom, not toward her mother, not toward me, but toward herself. Her footsteps were soft against the marble floor, barely audible, but to me, they sounded like thunder. I watched her silhouette disappear through the glowing doorway at the end of the hall. I didn't run after her. I didn't call her name. Some stories don't end with someone choosing you. Some end with them choosing themselves, and maybe that has to be enough. The quiet after the hall remained in chaos, but none of it reached me. I walked to the staff locker room, changed out of my uniform, and left through the side door. In the cold night air outside, I breathed for the first time in hours. I didn't know where Alara went. I didn't know what her future would look like now. I didn't know if our paths would ever cross again, but I hoped quietly, painfully, that wherever she walked barefoot into the night, she felt a little lighter. Weeks later, the final twist life returned to its routine: work, bills, silence. Sometimes I found myself standing in the bookstore again, touching the spines of poetry books she once showed me. Sometimes I thought of her. Sometimes I tried not to, but fate has its own timing. One afternoon, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address. No name, just my apartment number written in handwriting I knew too well. My heart pounded as I opened it. Inside was a small, worn piece of paper, a bookstore receipt. The one from the rainy night we met, the night she helped me choose a poetry book, the night something unspoken began. And on the back, in her handwriting, "Thank you for looking at me when no one else did." There was no signature. No promise of a future. No request to meet, just gratitude. Just memory. Just the echo of a love that didn't get a chance to become a life. I closed the envelope gently, holding it like something fragile. Some stories don't end with togetherness. But they leave you with something real. Something that stays, something that hurts beautifully. And this, her final message, was exactly that.